Welcome to Malpractice Diaries, MD, the secrets they keep. I'm Deirdre Dixon Gilbert, your host. Ivy Marquez, 19 years old, sustained a head and pelvic injury from a motor vehicle accident. Doctors gave positive prognosis that Ivy would be fine. She would fully recover and walk in about 6 weeks. 4 days later, the family was told Ivy had developed a brain herniation, that she would have zero quality of life. 6 days, and Ivy was gone. Sean Brunelli just thought he had the flu. He had been sick for a week and decided that he would go to the hospital. His body had flushed all electrolytes out of his body, and in 4 hours, he ended up with a brain injury, hospitalized for 4 months. The person who diagnosed him was licensed but not degreed. What did Ivy and Sean have in common? Same city, same hospital, same diagnosis. Medical malpractice in Boise, Idaho.
Athletes, listen up. Have you ever heard of hyponatremia?
It's a rare condition, but one that you need to know about. The condition involves drinking way too much water, so much water that it depletes sodium and dilutes your blood.
Now the results, seizures, coma, even death. Dr. Don Wilbur, the medical director of Global Health, joins us to talk about it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so what is hyponatremia?
Hyponatremia, what they were talking about is salt, or sodium of salt. And it's an electrolyte. Like your blood carries lots of electrolytes. That's part of the way we function. It carries all kinds of other things, proteins, fats, blood cells to carry oxygen, and so forth. Well, the sodium is very important as far as the function of your body. And if you lower the sodium level in your blood, then things don't function well, and that's when you get into the lethargy, cramps, even seizures, and even death. So you don't want to let your sodium level drop. The way it's dropping, what we're talking about here is in athletes, is by diluting it too much. I take in too much regular water and I dilute the sodium so the sodium level drops, thus hypo. So hyponatremia is a low sodium level, and it can be very injurious. It happens in these athletes that are participating in the sports and maybe losing some electrolytes or maybe over drinking. And the other place it happens is in these contests that people have where they drink lots of water, and that it can happen with them too. There've been different contests on radio stations where they drank a lot of water, and people have had a bad outcome. Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about consuming too much water. How do you know if too much is too much?
Well, all things in moderation. I mean, you don't go out and drink a gallon of water. I mean, nobody would do that.
Right.
So what seems normal, and once again, we're talking about the only people that are at risk are people that are doing 4-hour marathons, not a child that goes out and plays an hour sport or the guy that goes out and mows his lawn. Those people are more likely to get just regular dehydration. I lose too much fluid, and realize sweat is dilute. There's not really a lot of salt in sweat, so you're not losing a lot of salt. You're losing more water. So you replenish that with just regular water.
Okay.
One of the things we always worry about as pediatricians with sports drinks is there's always been way too much sugar in the sports drinks. And so people that get into, I drink Gatorade, this is good for my kids, it's a sports drink. Well, no, it's not. It's not really good. Water is a lot better in general for kids.
What if you have like water and maybe you add a few pretzels every now and then if you're going to be doing something for extended periods of time? Is that enough salt?
Yeah, you're loading up on salts ahead of time. Eat some salted peanuts, eat some pretzels, something like that, and you get a little bit of salt ahead of time. Once again, all things in moderation. I don't think you're going to take way too much salt. It'd make you sick.
So use some common sense either way.
Yeah, use common sense.
Everything
that always
in moderation.
Works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Hi, let's welcome Sean and Nancy to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you, Deidre?
Doing great. How are you? Good.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. Nancy, let's go with you first, and let's talk about what happened to Ivy. Ivy was your daughter, correct?
Yes, she was my custodial granddaughter. I raised Ivy from birth.
Okay.
She was 19 years old, and she was with her boyfriend, Larry. I don't know if you can see that picture very well.
We can. Okay.
Yes. And they were passengers in the back seat and were in a car accident, motor vehicle accident. And it took them to the ICU at a major trauma hospital here in Boise.
Mhm.
And she suffered from a head injury and also a pelvic fracture. And so we were told that she would be recover and that she would be walking in 6 weeks' time with physical therapy. And 3 days later, after they told us that, they told us they didn't know what went wrong, but she had suffered a brain herniation and that basically her quality of life would be zero and that she would be in a vegetative state. And she suffered brain death from what they didn't tell us at the time, but we pulled the medical record and made a lot of discoveries that what we found out was that they did not monitor her sodium level, which is a basic electrolyte. And it was a hospital acquired condition. She developed this, she was showing symptoms, and they did not recognize, they didn't monitor her sodium as it plummeted from below normal limits down to a critical level. And when they finally found out, they ordered the treatment 3% sodium chloride, and they delayed the treatment. And it was discovered ultimately that the nurse withheld and deprived her of that treatment for 2 hours while her sodium was at a critical level. So this was a hospital acquired condition, the low sodium, which is a very common electrolyte imbalance, and it causes water to enter the cell, which causes swelling. And when your skull has a limited capacity, and of course with the swelling, it caused a herniation, which is basically, well, you know what a herniation is. So that's what took her life.
So this is called hyponatremia, correct?
Hyponatremia.
Natremia.
Yes, low sodium.
Low sodium. It's a big term. That's one of those big terms that a lot of people, because I had to sort of go and do a lot of research because I had never heard of this before. So you went in, she had an accident and ended up with a brain herniation.
No, ma'am. She just had at the time, she had a subdural hematoma
Okay.
with subarachnoid hemorrhage,
Mhm.
and a neurosurgeon placed what's called a ventriculostomy. It's a
Okay.
tube that goes to the brain and drains the fluid
Okay.
from the brain. And he actually removed that prematurely. He removed it when her sodium was low. And of course, low sodium, when it's below normal limits, causes the swelling. So he removed it prematurely. And then as it continued to plummet, her sodium level plummeted,
Mhm.
the swelling increased, and there was no facilitation for drainage once the ventriculostomy was removed by the neurosurgeon.
And so this was doing surgery, right? Was this doing surgery? So she had surgery already?
No, she had a pelvic fracture, and about 4 days into her hospitalization, she
Okay.
went in on a Thursday, and the Monday she had pelvic surgery.
Okay.
And everything started going downhill after that surgery. We found her or I found her unmonitored and alone in the ICU unit at shift change while the nurses were giving report outside of her room. And as the doctor failed to come give me report in the intensive surgical intensive waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran up to her room and the nurses held up their hands and said, stop, report. It was in shift change. And I told them that the doctor didn't come give me report. So they allowed me into the room, which was dimly lit. All the monitors were alarming and Ivy was having a seizure. Okay. I had to call the nurses in and tell them, look, she's having a seizure. And they treated her. They turned on the dilaudid pump and they went and got the Valium and IV push, and her seizure subsided. Okay. But she was left alone in her ICU room with no cameras at shift change. And I had forewarned them ahead of time because I myself am a nurse. Okay. And I know what it's like at shift change. Mm-hmm. You're busy right. Giving a report. You're not with your patient. So I had raised a red flag anticipating that she could be coming back at shift change. And the nurse told me that she kind of shrugged her shoulders and said that was hospital policy, that they did not have provisions in the PACU unit, the recovery room, for ventilator patients. So it was hospital policy to return the patient from the OR directly back to the ICU unit, regardless if it's shift change or not.
We'll be right back.
Medical malpractice is the third leading cause of death in America, but is a well-kept secret. The truth has been hidden for decades, and the medical community would have you believe that there are nothing but frivolous lawsuits destroying their world. There is no such thing as a frivolous lawsuit, but that's the fabricated story being told. 1.5 million people die from medical malpractice a year, and that's a secret. Thousands of medical malpractice suits hidden in a database, botched surgeries, wrong site surgeries, instruments left in bodies, drug and alcohol issues, falsified medical records are all kept secret. Tort reform is what is called, but it has been the secret ingredient to no accountability. Malpractice Diaries, MD, we tell the secrets they keep. No more silence. www.nmmaa.org. Sponsored by the National Medical Malpractice Advocacy Association.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I understand here that we have Sean.
Yes.
And both of you, and the reason why you are here is both of you were at the same hospital, different circumstances.
Yes.
But the same issue in a different manner.
Yep.
So Sean, tell us about your story right quick.
Well, mine is pretty much exactly opposite of Nancy's. I came in, I got really sick, and I was sick for a week. So I went to the hospital, and I just wasn't feeling right. So I went there Saturday morning, and they instantly gave me a banana bag, which is a 0.9% IV with some vitamins thrown in there. And they did a blood work pull. So they took some blood from me. So they hit that banana bag up at 500 milliliters per hour, which is screaming, before they had the blood works results back. Blood works results came back and the sodium was low. It didn't drop, it was already low. So the ER/DO at St. Alphonsus called the ICU doc, Dr. East, and they discussed, hey, let's do this and this. They were only supposed to attach the 3% IV of a very low flow rate, along with another IV with some potassium in it, but with some sodium chloride too. So they discussed that. Of course, I did make it up to the ICU room. I stayed down in the ER. Well, the ICU doc comes down to my bedside. He sees that banana bag going at 500 milliliters per hour. He goes, that's going a little fast. and he turns it down from 500 to 50. Never charted it. The nurse never charted it either. Yeah, the only thing you can find it is a note in the comments section of one of the progress reports. And my brother and my sister-in-law were in my room when he did it, when the doctor did it. And then, and then that caused what, if they raise it, so it raised 12 points in 4 hours. You're not supposed to raise it 6 to 8 points in any 24 hours or 0.5 per hour if you're chronic. Nancy was acute. Nancy's IV was acute. So they should have given it right then. But they should have slowly raised it. What it does is instead of pushing water into the cells, it pulls it out. Well, the cell wall does not like that at all. So I went downhill. I stopped breathing. I went there December 7th. I stopped breathing on December 18th. I had a trach. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a hole there. And December 26th, they shipped me off to an LTAC to practically just die. Then I started getting a little better. I came back to St. Al's on February 26th. Now that's 3 months for the rehab because I was trying to learn to walk and I couldn't eat. I had it all was down the feeding tube, and I left that hospital April 11th. So I entered the hospital December 7th, left April 11th.
So let me ask you a question for both of you because.
And I like to plug this because I was locked in. There's a video. If you Google my name, you'll see a video I made. I was in locked in syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is something in itself. So I couldn't move a muscle except my eyeballs.
Because they had you locked in.
Because it affects the pons of the part of the brain. It's right at the top of the brain stem. It's the grand central station for all the, signals going to the rest of your body. Well, it was interrupted right at there. So, of course, I couldn't move anything really below my neck. And I couldn't breathe there. So my muscles of my, now you can see it. Mm-hmm. My muscles of my throat were collapsing. That's how come they had a tracheotomy.
So here's a question for both of you in a way. I need to ask this because when I read about this, they talked about this a lot with athletes. And the hyponatremia. Can you answer that for me, Nancy? Because they were talking about how some of the athletes, some of them died from this because of the lack of. And it's strange because Sean is going in with low. Your daughter goes in basically from a car wreck.
And her sodium was normal.
And her sodium normal, where they did not diagnose properly or misdiagnosed.
Correct.
And ended up your daughter deceased, Sean in a hospital for months fighting for his life. So give me a little bit about this. Talk a little bit about what this is, because I know that they're saying a lot of athletes died from this. And is it basically just water, right? It's either too much water or not enough.
Yeah, it's too much. You can have too much water. And of course, you hear about athletes, they tell you drink Gatorade, they want to keep your electrolytes replenished. You need to keep your levels within normal limits. Mm-hmm. And they mismanaged both Sean's chronic hyponatremia and Ivy's hospital acquired acute. Hers was acute, and it happened in less than 48 hours. It plummeted from 134 down to 116. Whoa. And they didn't monitor it till she crashed. And they were also doing breathing treatments, trying to wean her off of the ventilator. And there were several breaches identified in not only their policies, standard of care, the national standard of care for weaning a patient off of a ventilator, they have what's called a spontaneous breathing trial, which is a CPAP trial. But prior to that, there should be done an awakening trial to make sure your patient is ready. You know, they do several things to make sure that they can tolerate the test. They failed to do that with Ivy. And for 3 trials, each one she failed with a seizure because she wasn't ready to wean off of this breathing machine. Same with the ventriculostomy, there's a weaning process. The weaning process wasn't done. They're not following policies, doctor's orders, or the standard of care.
And I noticed that in a short video that I saw of yours, Sean, and I saw, I guess it was on your Instagram of the doctor who actually talked about that, you know, he did wrong. He knew he did wrong.
Yeah.
And actually was nothing done to him.
Well, you know what really happened is the doctor that came down and turned it from 500 milliliters down to 50 because they were giving me too much sodium. It was never charted, and he went in front of the Idaho Board of Medicine, which in any lawsuit you got to do if you're suing a hospital, and lied. Flat out, him and his attorneys lied to the Idaho Board of Medicine. I have the proof on Instagram. You can look it up. I mean, he blatantly just lied. And he had 2 depositions. He absolutely lied in the first one. The second one, he told, it was the volume of the 0.9% that did it, not the little bit of 3% that we gave him. It was the volume of the 0.9%.
Because I'm looking at you, Sean, and one of the things I know that Nancy, you made a statement, and Sean, in the statements that you've made as well, that this caused a shrinkage in the brain.
That's exactly right. Sodium pulls water from the organs of your body, and the cells in the brain react a lot differently than, say, the lungs or the liver or anything else. They do not like it. So when it pulled that water, that big water molecule out of the cell, it destroys the cell wall. So that's what carries the electricity to your muscles that triggers it to fire. So I have no coordination or no balance because of this. I lost my job, everything else.
So let's go to my next question. Why weren't you able to get justice, Nancy? Why didn't you get justice for this? I mean, you go in, your daughter goes in from a car wreck to brain damage to death from not being misdiagnosed and not receiving the treatment. You would think that this would be a lawsuit.
Yes, ma'am. We had a trial date.
Okay.
We had hired, it was very difficult to find an attorney because of the caps in every state. Attorneys don't want to take this because they don't make the money. Okay.
So before you keep going, what is the cap?
350,000.
Okay.
350,000. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And I was told this by every attorney that I called. They said, yeah, it sounds like you have a good case, but we don't make any money, so we really can't take your case. Well, I went downtown after searching. I searched 6 months straight after Ivy passed, because we pulled the record and identified that there was malpractice. From going to saying she'll be fine, go home, get some rest, you're going to need it when she gets home, to I'm sorry, we don't know what happened. So we knew something had gone amiss and pulled the record. And we had let me back up. I went to an attorney downtown here and was telling him the case, as he was telling me, there was another attorney listening. And she felt like, she told me, I have a good feeling about this, is what she said. And she told me if we can prove recklessness, that would eliminate the cap. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we felt like we had a chance. We got 2 physician expert witnesses from St. Louis and Virginia. And one was a neurosurgeon and the other was a critical care neurointensivist. And both of them told us, they verified that the reason for the brain herniation and her death was the hyponatremia, the low sodium. And so it was identified that was the problem. And as I did I was actually my attorney's med legal nurse. I did all the research, all the investigation. I set up an expert witness. She became complacent, and I really didn't understand why. The more research I did, the stronger our case became. It was just months before, or right before my deposition, I identified that the nurse actually delayed the treatment for 2 hours and then withheld it for 2 hours at a critical time when she needed treatment. They omitted the bolus pushes, so they denied her the treatment. When I emailed my attorney and provided her with this information, her response was holy shit. She was shocked. So that even brought our case even stronger. We knew we would get justice for Ivy, and hopefully this wouldn't happen anymore. And our attorney also told us that with settlement, there was change and compensation. She said if we went to trial, there would only be compensation. So I identified several deficiencies in their policies. Mm-hmm. And I brought this to their attentions. For instance, in their critical care replacement protocol, sodium is not listed. Okay, sodium isn't even on there. They have no weaning. There were just several policies and procedures that I identified that needed to be fixed. I have a history of being the nurse cop and going in and finding deficiencies and correcting them, going to committee, making policy and correcting them. So I had, we were hoping, that we would go to trial. We had a trial date set. Our attorney started becoming more complacent instead of, getting more on the job. And I asked her to partner with somebody because I felt like she was in over her head. I don't believe she was competent to take this case. She's not a medical malpractice attorney, so I wanted her to partner with someone that was seasoned and experienced in this. And she told me that, she felt like our jury and they really didn't like out-of-towners coming in, and she preferred to keep it local. So I kept looking. She didn't do anything. We went to go discuss some admissions, and she brought up to me settlement, which kind of upset me because we didn't want to settle. We wanted to expose this hospital and take it to trial. Okay. What happened next was we got an email from our attorney, and she set up a mediation. And we thought, okay, we'll go. They wanted a demand for us to have a demand letter. And so we asked for an amount for a settlement. And when we went to mediation, we felt like it was 2 against 1. It was the mediator and the attorney. and my daughter and I on the other side of the table. It was 2 against 1. There was no stenographer. This was not recorded.
Wow.
Our 2 depositions were recorded with a stenographer.
Wow.
Our attorney wouldn't even depose the nurses or the doctors. No depositions. I couldn't understand why, but in any case, we started the mediation process, and right away, something was off. Our mediator was a former judge, and he came in, and the first thing he told us was that he accidentally double booked another mediation for the same time, and the other people were waiting out in the lobby to have their mediation after we were done. So that kind of, it was a tactic. We feel like it put us under pressure. We've got people waiting out there, and we didn't really, we thought, okay, so they used every tactic. They said that since my daughter I had custody of Ivy. Okay, I was her custodial grandmother, and I raised her from birth. And they said that the jury they would look down on her for giving her up to me when she was a baby for custody. And we told them that she had a good relationship. We could prove that. They were very close, my daughter and Ivy. We were all very close, and we could prove that. But they used that. They also said, the mediator said, now your jury, you know what people at Walmart look like? He said, that's what your jury's going to look like. And we didn't, and we said, well, the judge, we were like, well, the judge, surely, and they both shook their head, the judge, Anyway, they started lowballed us at a very low number to make they used every tactic. They blamed the driver of the car. Let's see, what else? She just totally turned on us at mediation. Our attorney, she didn't defend us. She didn't represent us. She basically walked away every time he went out and came back with something else. And we told them we want to stop and go to trial, because she told us it was our decision. But
So
it was not our decision.
So basically, you didn't go to trial. You
No,
didn't.
We settled under duress.
You settled, okay.
Under duress. My daughter was in tears. They used the threatening tactic that we would not win in Idaho. They said, now the mediator said, now if we were in Texas, he said, oh, I would love to be working for the plaintiff in Texas.
Wow.
But in Idaho, he said just the laws, like we just would not win, is what they told us. We would not. And my daughter was crying. Of course, they had bullied her and berated her. And she just was like, no, we can't, crying and crying. And we settled. And then afterwards, after we settled for just a measly amount, I asked her for that demand letter and found out that she lied. We had asked for $4 million, and she asked in the demand letter for 1.5. So she lied. She had violated the rules of conduct, and we have a grievance against her. And coincidentally, Sean and I, not only were we in the same hospital, but the 2 attorneys for the hospital and the neurosurgeon are the same 2 attorneys that Sean has had.
So, 2 attorneys. Let's go to Sean. Sean, why weren't you able to get justice? Now, you were still living.
Yeah, that's my problem. I should have died.
And that is exactly where I wanted to head, because this is one of the main problems when we're dealing with medical malpractice. just as you said, many of the attorneys would say that you will get more if you die than you would if you're alive. But we both know that that's not true because we've already know where Nancy had to go. So Sean, give me why you didn't get justice.
Okay, so early on, before I stopped talking, my sister-in-law took power of attorney over me. She instantly got an attorney because they jumped at the case because they did not think I would live at all. So I did though, and we had all the depositions and everything else. We deposited my nurse, which hooked it up that the silly DO down there at Dr. Morris at St. Alphonsus ordered 3 sources of sodium on a patient with hyponatremia. The nurse had her depot. She had no idea the rate. She said, I don't think that's true. The doctor, they all lied to the Idaho Board of Medicine, so I did not have them on my side. So that's a big hitter with the expert witness. You got to have the Idaho Board of Medicine on your side. And then they were going to lie. Now, granted, they all had a peer review of my care at the hospital. They knew exactly what went wrong. It was the volume of the 0.9%. Well, all the depositions were taken, and the expert witness and my attorney, Charles Hepworth, decided, it's not worth it. The money just wasn't there. Even though I was an engineer, and this happened when I was 43, they could sue for my lost wages because I'm on SSDI now. I can't walk. My coordination and balance are gone. So he withdrew, and in the state of Idaho, if you don't dismiss, the defense has the opportunity to sue me. Get that? So I called all around to find another attorney, all the big ones in town, Mahoney, Comstock. If my attorney, Mr. Hepworth, can't get it done, then nobody can. So, but the hospital was willing to lie in the courtroom as well as to the Idaho Board of Medicine. So you got one expert witness dealing with a whole hospital. And how many expert witnesses is that hospital going to pull? They pulled one, the same one that turned my IV down. He was the expert witness, if you can believe that, at the Idaho Board of Medicine pre-litigation meeting. The same doctor in the ICU that came to my ER bed and turned my IV down from 500 to 50, which made no difference. The dang thing was almost already in me fully. 99% of it was. So, yeah, they called that doctor into my, as their expert witness, which he damn well knows what happened to me, but he lied about it. So Charlie and the expert witness in San Francisco said, we're washing our hands in the whole affair. This is going to be totally expensive if this goes to trial.
Wow.
So yeah.
So we're running out of time, and I want to say thank you for both of you coming to the show.
Right. I want to say one more thing. We did turn him into the Idaho Board of Medicine for lying. They did nothing. We turned all the lawyers in the Idaho State Bar, nothing. They did nothing. The actual, my ICU doc is a pulmonologist. The chairman of the Idaho Board of Medicine is the same pulmonologist at the same hospital, St. Alphonsus.
So it seems to me that they're using the same people that harmed you,
that are willing to lie,
witnesses, and so forth.
Yeah.
Again, we want to say thank you for coming to the show. Thank you, Nurse Nancy. Thank you for all that you do. Sean, thank you for coming on, and thank you for all that you do and bring this.
May I say one more
yes.
thing, Deidre? I just wanted to let you know that I'm working with now our Republicans in the legislature to pass Ivy's law to mandate cameras in our ICU to monitor our patients for safety, to save lives. Okay.
We'll share that with the rest of us so that we can also push that agenda, because I do know that Solinsky thinks she's representative. She was also pushing for cameras in the operating room. I think that's going to be one of a big one. And, Christine Solinsky, yeah, and I'll definitely send that to you.
And you got to read this book. This guy went through pretty much what I went through, but he didn't turn out as good.
Thank you. Thank you both for
Thank you for having us.
and thank you for coming on. God bless you.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
How is it that these hospitals and physicians who fail to diagnose or make mistakes that cause severe injuries get away with it over and over again? How is it that the attorney who was to help them both end up turning their backs? These questions are not isolated. This happens more often than not, and those that are harmed by these mistakes suffer without any relief of justice or assistance.
In 2020, insurance companies and business lobbyists got the Louisiana legislature to take away your rights. Calling it tort reform, they said it will save you money on insurance costs, when in actuality they're just lining their own pockets. The hospital industry claims healthcare costs are rising due to lawsuits and trial lawyers, even though damage caps on awards for their negligence have been capped since 1975. Meanwhile, hospital charges are so inflated that insurance companies, Medicare, and Medicaid routinely cut their bills. Trial lawyers fight for you, the people, and your rights. They hold businesses and insurance companies responsible for injuries and deaths caused by their negligence. That's why trial lawyers oppose tort reform, and you should too. Tort reform, taking away your rights. Good for business, bad for you. Brought to you by the National Medical Malpractice Advocacy Association.
Thanks for tuning in to Malpractice Diaries, MD. We tell the stories they keep. Please make sure that you tune in next week, same time, same station, same Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we look forward to seeing you next week. See you soon.